The lawyer's voice echoed through the conference room. And to my grandson, Caleb Morrison, I leave the entirety of my estate, valued at $47 million. My Aunt Vivian's coffee cup shattered on the marble floor. My Uncle Preston turned purple. My father Arthur's mouth hung open in disbelief. They'd spent 6 months treating me like trash, calling me a failure, excluding me from family dinners. My cousin Hayden had literally said, "Why invite the broke nephew? He can't even afford to chip in for gifts." For half a year, I'd played along. Let them think I was struggling. Wore old clothes. Drove a beat-up car. Mentioned money troubles whenever they asked about my life. Because my grandfather had told me the truth before he died. "Caleb, I'm leaving everything to you. But don't tell anyone. I want to see who they really are when they think there's nothing left for them." Now, watching their faces as they realized the broke failure had inherited everything, I understood exactly what he meant. This isn't just a story about inheritance. It's about what happens when people show you who they really are, and you have the power to show them the consequences. Justice must be restored and greed must be exposed. You won't believe what I discovered about my family. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. This is going to be a wild ride. My name is Caleb Morrison, and 6 months ago, I thought I had a close family. Not perfect, but loving. Connected. The kind of family that shows up for each other. I was 29, working as a software engineer at a mid-sized tech company in Seattle. Good job, decent salary, stable life. Nothing flashy, but comfortable. I'd always been the quiet one in the family. Not as successful as my cousin Hayden, who worked in finance. Not as charismatic as my brother Xavier, who was in sales. Just steady, reliable. The guy who'd show up to help you move, who'd remember birthdays, who'd drive 3 hours for family dinners every month. My grandfather, Wallace Morrison, was 84. Self-made man who'd built a chain of hardware stores across Washington state. He'd retired 20 years ago, sold the business, and lived comfortably, but not extravagantly, in a nice house in Bellevue. We were close. I'd visit him every weekend. We'd play chess, talk about technology, discuss books. He was sharp, funny, and genuinely interested in my life. "How's work, Caleb?" he'd ask. "Good. Working on a new project, actually kind of exciting." "You're smart. Smarter than people give you credit for. You know that." I'd laugh it off, but he'd insist. "I'm serious. You see things other people miss. That's a rare gift." The rest of the family visited less frequently. My father Arthur, Wallace's son, would stop by once a month. My Aunt Vivian, Wallace's daughter, came maybe every other month. My Uncle Preston, who'd married into the family, only showed up on major holidays. 6 months before Wallace died, everything changed. It started with a phone call. Wallace had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 months to live, maybe 8 if he was lucky. The family descended like vultures. Suddenly, everyone was visiting, bringing gifts, talking about preserving his legacy and making sure his final wishes were honored. The concern seemed genuine at first, but I noticed things. Conversations that stopped when I entered the room. My Aunt Vivian asking Wallace about his estate planning and making sure everything was in order. My father discussing tax implications and proper asset distribution. Wallace noticed too. I could see it in his eyes during those visits. Sadness, disappointment, but also something calculating. One evening, after everyone else had left, Wallace asked me to stay. "Caleb, I need to tell you something important. What I'm about to say doesn't leave this room." "Of course, Grandpa. I'm leaving everything to you. The house, the investments, all of it. About $47 million total." I sat there stunned. "Grandpa, are you sure? What about Dad?" "Aunt Vivian. They'll be provided for, but the bulk goes to you. And here's why I'm telling you now. I want you to see how they behave when they think you're getting nothing." "I don't understand." He leaned forward, his voice intense despite his frailty. "For the next 6 months, I want you to pretend you're struggling financially. Tell them work isn't going well, that you're barely making ends meet. I want to see who they really are when they think you have nothing and they're splitting millions." That seems cruel? Maybe. But I've built this fortune over 50 years. I want it going to someone with character, not just someone with my blood. "Play along, Caleb. Let me see the truth before I die." I agreed. It felt wrong, but Wallace was dying. If this gave him peace, I'd do it. What I didn't know was how devastating the truth would be. The transformation in how my family treated me was swift and brutal. At the next family dinner, I mentioned casually that work had been rough lately. "Oh," my father asked. "What's going on?" "Just some restructuring. My position might be eliminated. I'm updating my resume, but the tech market is tough right now." It was a complete lie. I'd actually just gotten a promotion and a raise. But I delivered it with enough authentic worry that everyone believed it. The concern on their faces lasted exactly 30 seconds. "Well, you're young," my Aunt Vivian said, already looking away. "You'll bounce back. Might be time to consider a more stable career," my Uncle Preston added. "Tech is so volatile." My cousin Hayden, who was 3 years younger but made twice my alleged salary in finance, smirked. "Bro, I told you software engineering was a dead end. Should have gone into finance like me." The tone had shifted. Subtle, but unmistakable. I was no longer the reliable nephew. I was becoming the family disappointment. Over the next few weeks, I escalated the performance. Drove my old college car instead of my newer one. Wore cheaper clothes. Mentioned cutting back and tightening the budget. "Can't make it to Derek's birthday dinner," I told my father on the phone. "Money's tight, and that restaurant is expensive." "Oh, well, that's unfortunate. We'll miss you." But they didn't reschedule somewhere cheaper. They just went without me. Wallace watched all of this from his hospital bed during his final months. I'd visit him privately and report what was happening. "Hayden suggested I ask you for money," I told him one day. "Said you'd probably want to help me get back on my feet before you die." Wallace's laugh turned into a cough. "Did he now?" "Let me guess. He offered to help you ask." "How did you know?" "Because he asked me the same thing. Wanted to know if I'd be giving financial gifts before I passed to minimize estate taxes. Had a whole spreadsheet worked out. That's actually smart estate planning. It's a shakedown, Caleb. He doesn't care about taxes. He wants his inheritance early so he can invest it before I'm dead." The visits to Wallace's hospital room became increasingly transparent. "My Aunt Vivian brought a lawyer just to make sure all your documents are in order, Dad." My father kept asking about the location of important papers and account information. Nobody asked how Wallace was feeling. Nobody talked about his life, his memories, his fears about dying. Every conversation circled back to money. You won't believe what I discovered next. I'd installed a recording app on my phone and started documenting conversations. Not because I planned to use it, but because I couldn't believe what I was hearing and needed proof I wasn't imagining it. At a family gathering 3 months before Wallace died, I excused myself to use the bathroom. Left my phone in the living room, recording. What I heard made my blood run cold. "So how much do you think Dad's actually worth?" Aunt Vivian asked. 40, maybe 50 million, my father responded. "The house alone is worth 3 million. Then there's the investment portfolio. Split 3 ways. That's 15 to 17 million each," Uncle Preston calculated. 4 ways if we have to split with the grandkids. "Caleb won't get much," Hayden said confidently. "He's broke, unstable. If Grandpa's smart, he'll minimize what goes to him. Can't trust someone in financial trouble with inheritance money." "Agreed," my father said. My own father. Caleb's always been disappointing. Nice kid, but no ambition. Wallace knows better than to waste money on someone who can't manage it. I stood in the bathroom, listening through the door, feeling something inside me harden into ice. These people didn't just assume I'd get less. They were actively hoping for it, planning around it, using my fake financial troubles as justification for why I deserved nothing. Little did they know, I was documenting every word. Over the next 3 months, I became a ghost at family functions. Partly because I was rarely invited, partly because I couldn't stand looking at them. But I kept gathering evidence. I recorded a conversation with my father where I asked him for a small loan, $5,000 to cover rent until I found a new job. "Caleb, I wish I could help," he said with practiced sympathy. "But things are tight for us too. Your mother's medical bills, the house payment. I just don't have it to spare." This was the same man who'd just bought a $40,000 boat. I'd seen the photos on Facebook. "I understand, Dad. Thanks anyway. Have you thought about asking Wallace? He might be willing to help. I don't want to bother him while he's sick. He'd want to help you, son. Maybe I could talk to him for you." Translation: let me make sure Wallace knows you're a financial mess so he minimizes your inheritance. I recorded my cousin Hayden telling me I should just accept that some people are meant to be successful and others aren't. He offered to teach me about financial responsibility once his inheritance came through. I documented my Aunt Vivian excluding me from the family group chat where they were planning Wallace's estate logistics meeting, basically a pre-death divvying up of possessions. The cruelest moment came 6 weeks before Wallace died. My brother Xavier's wedding. I showed up in my poor Caleb outfit, older suit, worn shoes. I couldn't afford a gift beyond a $50 Amazon card. Hayden pulled me aside at the reception. Dude, this is embarrassing. You couldn't even get a decent gift? Everyone's going to think we don't take care of family. I'm doing my best. Your best isn't good enough. Look, when Grandpa dies, you're probably not getting much anyway. But the rest of us need to maintain appearances. Maybe just skip the next few family events? Until you get your life together? I smiled. Sure, Hayden. Whatever you think is best. That night, I visited Wallace in hospice. He was getting weaker, but his mind was sharp. How bad is it? He asked. Pretty bad, Grandpa. Tell me. I did. Every dismissal, every insult, every conversation I recorded. By the end, there were tears in Wallace's eyes. I'm sorry, Caleb. I'm sorry you had to see this. But I needed to know the truth. Why me, though? Why leave everything to me? Because you're the only one who visited me before I got sick. The only one who played chess with me, talked to me about things that mattered. The only one who asked about my life instead of my bank account. He gripped my hand with surprising strength. And because you're the only one who would have given me the same respect whether I had $47 million or $47. That's worth more than all the money in the world. Wallace died 3 weeks later, surrounded by family who were performing grief while calculating percentages. The will reading was scheduled for the following week. This is where it gets really good. The week between Wallace's funeral and the will reading was fascinating. I'd never seen people simultaneously mourn and celebrate. At the funeral, there were tears. Eulogies about what a great man Wallace had been. My Aunt Vivian's speech about cherishing his legacy was particularly rich considering she'd visited him twice in his final year before the diagnosis. But afterward, at the reception, I overheard the real conversations. Thank God he updated his will last year. Uncle Preston said to my father, everything's clean and organized. 3-way split, right? Vivian confirmed. That's what he told me. With provisions for the grandkids, my father added. Probably small trusts. Enough to make it look fair. Nobody mentioned my name. When I walked past their conversation group, they stopped talking and gave me sympathetic smiles. How are you holding up, Caleb? Aunt Vivian asked, her concern as fake as a $3 bill. I'm okay. Going to miss him. We all will. Listen, about the will reading next week. You should come, but don't expect much. Wallace wanted to make sure his estate was managed responsibly. I'm sure he left you something, but given your situation, she didn't finish. Didn't need to. The message was clear, know your place. Hayden was worse. He actually tried to warn me away from the reading entirely. Hey man, maybe you should skip it. Might be awkward when they read the numbers. You know how Grandpa was about financial responsibility, with your job situation and all. I'll be there, I said simply. Your call. Just trying to save you embarrassment. What they didn't know was that Wallace had left very specific instructions with his lawyer. Instructions about how the reading should be conducted, who should be present, what order things should be revealed. He'd planned this like a military operation. I spent that week preparing mentally. I knew what was coming, knew how they'd react. Rehearsed staying calm, not gloating, letting the truth speak for itself. The night before the reading, I couldn't sleep. Not from anxiety, from anticipation. Tomorrow, everything would change. They thought they were dealing with broke, desperate Caleb who'd be grateful for crumbs. They were about to learn they'd been performing for someone who'd been watching the whole show. And the final act was about to begin. The conference room at Morrison & Associates, Wallace's law firm, was designed for exactly this kind of moment. Big windows overlooking Seattle. Expensive leather chairs. A long mahogany table that screamed, important decisions happen here. My father sat at one end with his wife, my stepmother Patricia. Aunt Vivian and Uncle Preston sat across from them. Hayden sat next to them, already checking his phone, probably calculating returns on his expected inheritance. My brother Xavier was there, looking uncomfortable. He'd always been the decent one in the family. I sat at the far end, wearing my performance costume, wrinkled khakis, an old sweater. The family failure, present out of obligation. Wallace's attorney, Garrison Beck, was a man in his 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen everything. He'd known Wallace for 40 years. Thank you all for coming, Garrison began. Wallace left very specific instructions for how this reading should be conducted. I'm going to ask you to hold all questions until the end. He opened a leather folder and pulled out the will. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral. The estate of Wallace Theodore Morrison, being of sound mind and body at the time of this writing, has been valued at approximately $47 million, including real estate, investment portfolios, and liquid assets. Aunt Vivian's eyes lit up. Uncle Preston actually smiled. I saw Hayden do quick math on his phone. 15 million each, give or take. Wallace has made the following dispositions, Garrison continued. To my son Arthur Morrison, I leave my collection of first edition books and the sum of $100,000 to be held in trust with specific spending restrictions. My father's face went from pleased to confused. Wait, 100. Please hold questions, Garrison said firmly. To my daughter Vivian Morrison Preston, I leave my late wife's jewelry and the sum of $100,000 to be held in trust with specific spending restrictions. Vivian stood up. That's not right. There must be a mistake. Sit down, Mrs. Preston. To my grandson Hayden Preston, I leave the sum of $50,000 to be paid upon successful completion of financial literacy courses, proof of which must be submitted to this firm. Hayden's face turned red. Financial literacy? I work in finance. To my grandson Xavier Morrison, I leave the sum of $50,000, unrestricted, in recognition of his character and kindness to me during my final years. Xavier looked shocked. I don't understand what's happening. Garrison paused, looked directly at me, and I saw the hint of a smile. And to my grandson, Caleb Theodore Morrison, I leave the entirety of the remaining estate, including the family home in Bellevue, all investment portfolios, all remaining liquid assets, and all business interests. Total value, approximately $46,200,000. The silence was deafening. Then Vivian's coffee cup slipped from her hand and shattered on the marble floor. Uncle Preston literally stood up and shouted, "That's impossible." My father just stared at me, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, and something that looked like rage. Hayden was the first to find words. No way. Caleb's broke. He can't even afford rent. This is insane. Actually, I said, speaking for the first time, my voice calm and clear, I'm not broke. I make $95,000 a year as a senior software engineer. I have no debt. I own my condo outright. And I've been pretending to struggle for the past 6 months because Grandpa asked me to. But the best part was yet to come. This is fraud. Aunt Vivian shrieked. He manipulated Dad. Dad wasn't in his right mind. Garrison held up a hand. Mrs. Preston, Wallace underwent multiple competency evaluations in his final year. I have documentation from 3 separate physicians confirming he was completely lucid and capable of making legal decisions. In fact, he anticipated these exact objections. He pulled out another document. Wallace recorded a video statement to be played at this reading. He specifically requested it be shown after the will was read. If you'll direct your attention to the screen. A projection screen lowered from the ceiling. The lights dimmed. Wallace appeared on screen, sitting in his home office. This was recorded about 2 months before he died. He looked frail, but his eyes were sharp. If you're watching this, I'm gone. And based on Garrison's instructions, you've just heard my will. I imagine some of you are upset. Let me explain why. My father's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle spasm. For the last 6 months of my life, I conducted an experiment. I asked my grandson Caleb to pretend he was struggling financially, to see how you would all react, to see who you really were when you thought he had nothing and you were inheriting millions. On screen, Wallace's expression hardened. The results devastated me. Arthur, my son, you called Caleb disappointing when you thought he couldn't hear. You refused him a small loan while buying a boat. You tried to convince me he was financially irresponsible so I'd leave him less. My father went pale. Vivian, my daughter, you excluded Caleb from family gatherings. You told him he was an embarrassment. You planned around him like he was an obstacle to your inheritance rather than your nephew. Aunt Vivian was crying now, but not from sadness. From rage. Hayden, my grandson, you told Caleb he should skip this reading to avoid embarrassment. You offered to teach him financial responsibility while you've maxed out credit cards I know nothing about. Hayden looked like he wanted to run. The only person who showed consistent character was Caleb. He visited me every week before I got sick. He played chess with me, talked to me about life. He did this expecting nothing in return. That's why everything goes to him. Wallace leaned closer to the camera. If you're angry right now, ask yourself why. Ask yourself what you would have done differently if you'd known Caleb was getting everything. If the answer has been nicer to him, then you've proven exactly why you're getting almost nothing. The screen went dark. The conference room erupted. This is bullshit, Hayden shouted. We can contest this. You can try, Garrison said calmly. But Wallace anticipated that too. He's left a $10 million legal defense fund specifically to defend this will against any challenges. You'd be fighting $46 million with $10 million in legal backing. I don't recommend it. Caleb, my father finally spoke, his voice shaking with barely controlled fury. This was your idea, wasn't it? You manipulated a dying old man. Stop, Xavier cut him off. Just stop, Dad. I was there. I saw how you all treated him. Caleb didn't manipulate anything. You all showed who you really were. Xavier, stay out of this. No, I'm done staying out of it. You all treated Caleb like garbage when you thought he had nothing. You excluded him, insulted him, made him feel worthless. And now you're mad that there are consequences. Aunt Vivian turned to me, her tears evaporating into pure venom. You vindictive little snake. You set us up. You played us. I played a role Grandpa asked me to play, I said calmly. You revealed who you actually are. There's a difference. We're family, Uncle Preston shouted. You can't just take everything. I didn't take anything. It was given to me by someone who wanted it to go to someone with character instead of someone with his DNA. What would you do in my situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The next 6 months were a masterclass in watching bridges burn. My father and aunt immediately hired lawyers to contest the will. It lasted exactly 3 weeks before their attorney advised them to drop it. The will is airtight, their lawyer explained in a conference call I was included on. Wallace had 3 competency evaluations. He documented his reasoning extensively. The video statement demonstrates clear intent. And frankly, your behavior toward Mr. Caleb Morrison, which is documented in recorded conversations, actually supports Wallace's reasoning for excluding you. Recorded conversations? My father's voice went cold. What are you talking about? I recorded everything, I explained. Every call where you refused me help while buying luxury items. Every conversation about planning around my financial instability. Every calculation about how to minimize my inheritance. All of it time-stamped and backed up. The legal challenge died immediately, but the social fallout was just beginning. Xavier, bless him, told everyone the truth. He posted on social media about what had actually happened, defending my character and exposing how the family had behaved. It went semi-viral in our extended social circle. Just watch my family get exactly what they deserved, he wrote. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. My brother Caleb showed us he's a man of character. The rest showed us they're only family when there's money involved. The post got shared 847 times. Comments poured in from family friends, old neighbors, people who'd known Wallace. I always knew Vivian was after Wallace's money. She never visited until he got sick. Arthur Morrison was always jealous of his father's success. No surprise he's bitter now. Caleb used to help me with my computer every week at the senior center. Never charged me a dime. He deserves everything. The social destruction was beautiful to watch. My father and aunt found themselves slowly excluded from social events. Their friends stopped calling. Church members grew distant. Turns out, people don't like being associated with the family that got caught being greedy on video. Hayden lost his job in finance. Not directly because of the will, but because his employer saw the social media storm and decided someone with character issues wasn't a good fit for managing other people's money. Uncle Preston's business lost clients. Word spread about how he'd treated his wife's dying father's grandson. Business relationships are built on trust. He demonstrated he had none. The cherry on top? The local newspaper ran a story, not about the inheritance specifically, but about Wallace's life and legacy. They interviewed people who'd known him, and several mentioned how sad it was that most of his family only showed up when he was dying. His grandson Caleb was there every week for years. One friend was quoted, "Playing chess, just spending time." That meant more to Wallace than all the deathbed visits combined. If you're enjoying watching entitled family members face consequences, hit that subscribe button. My father showed up at my new house unannounced on a Saturday morning. I'd bought a beautiful place in Madison Park with a view of Lake Washington. Nothing ostentatious, just comfortable and exactly what I'd always wanted. I saw him through my Ring camera, looking older and smaller than I remembered. He wasn't there to yell. His posture told me that much. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity and maybe a remnant of who I used to be made me open the door. "Dad, Caleb, can we talk?" I let him in. We sat in my living room with its view of the lake. He looked around, taking in the evidence of my new life. "You've done well with the money." "It's not about the money. It never was." He nodded, staring at his hands. "I know. That's what I came to say. I know it's not about the money." "Then what was it about for you?" "Fear." He looked up, and I was startled to see genuine tears. My whole life, I was Wallace Morrison's son. Do you know what that's like? Having a father who's brilliant and successful and watching everything you do, wondering if you'll measure up. So you took it out on me? I saw you visiting him every week, playing chess, talking for hours. He lit up around you in a way he never did with me. And I was jealous. Jealous of my own son having the relationship with my father that I never could. That's not my fault. I know it's not. But when you started struggling, when it looked like you were failing, there was this relief. Like finally you were human. Finally you weren't perfect. I was never perfect, Dad. I was just myself. He was crying openly now. I destroyed our relationship over money I didn't even need. I have a good life. A comfortable retirement. I didn't need millions. But the thought of you getting it all, of you being more successful than me, of you having the relationship with Wallace that I never had. It broke you, I finished. Yes. We sat in silence. I wasn't angry anymore. Just sad. Sad for what could have been and what was lost. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I know it doesn't fix anything. I know I can't undo what I said, how I treated you. But I am genuinely, deeply sorry. I appreciate that. Is there any chance, can we rebuild something? I don't want your money. I just want my son back." I thought about it for a long time. About the father I'd known as a child versus the man who dismissed me as a disappointment. About forgiveness and consequences and whether people can really change. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe someday. But right now I need space. I need to build my new life without worrying about who's judging it or measuring it or calculating its worth." "I understand." He stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Wallace was right about you. You have character. More than any of us." After he left, I sat on my deck, looking at the lake, thinking about Wallace. About the gift he'd given me. Not just the money, but the truth. The truth about who people really were. My phone buzzed. A text from Xavier. "Beer tonight? Want to celebrate your new place." Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who shows up, who stays, who values you for who you are rather than what you have. I had $46 million. But I would have traded it all for the family I thought I had. The family that existed before I learned the truth. But at least now I knew the truth. And that was worth something too. That was 2 years ago. The dust has settled. The family relationships I thought I had are gone, but new ones have formed. Xavier and I are closer than ever. He comes over every Sunday. We grill, watch sports, talk about life. He got engaged last month, and when he asked me to be his best man, it meant more than any inheritance ever could. I established the Wallace Morrison Foundation for Character Education. It gives scholarships to students who demonstrate integrity, kindness, and service, the values Wallace tried to instill in a family that forgot them. Last year, we gave out 47 scholarships. One for each million Wallace left me. The recipients don't know who funds it. They just know someone believes in rewarding character over credentials. I reconnected with my father's mother, my grandmother Helen. She'd been distant during all the Will drama, but she reached out 6 months ago. I couldn't watch what they were doing. She told me over coffee. How they treated you. It made me ashamed. But I want you to know, Wallace talked about you constantly. How proud he was. How you reminded him of himself when he was young. We have lunch once a month now. She tells me stories about Wallace as a young man, struggling to build his business, facing people who doubted him. I see the parallels. Understand why he chose me. My father and I have a cordial relationship. We email occasionally. He sends birthday cards. He'll never be the dad I thought I had, but he's trying to be something better than the man he became. That's enough. Aunt Vivian and Hayden, I never hear from. They moved to California. Started over. Maybe that's for the best. I'm dating someone wonderful. Her name is Sienna. She's a teacher. When we met at a fundraiser for the foundation, she had no idea about my financial situation. We talked for hours about education, about helping kids, about making a difference. On our third date, I told her about the inheritance, about the family drama, all of it. She was quiet for a long time. That must have been devastating, she said finally. To learn your family only valued you when they thought you had nothing to give them. It was. But it taught me who really mattered. Can I ask you something? Anything. If you could go back and refuse to play along with your grandfather's experiment, would you? I thought about it. No, because then I'd still believe in a family that didn't exist. I'd be living a comfortable lie. This way, I know the truth. And I can build something real. She smiled. That's why your grandfather chose you. You value truth over comfort. Last week, I visited Wallace's grave for the first time in months. Brought flowers. Sat on the grass next to his headstone. You were right, Grandpa, I told him. About everything. Thank you for caring enough to show me the truth, even though it hurt. Thank you for believing I could handle it. Thank you for seeing in me what I didn't see in myself. A breeze rustled the trees. Maybe it was Wallace. Maybe it was just wind. But I felt at peace. The money changed my life. But the lesson changed who I am. I learned that family is a verb, not a noun. It's what you do, not who you're related to. I learned that character is revealed in how people treat you when they think you have nothing. I learned that sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is the truth, even when it destroys everything you believed. Wallace Morrison left me $46 million. But the real inheritance was teaching me to value people who loved me for who I was, not what I could provide. That's a legacy worth more than any bank account. Justice was served, and truth had the final word. If you made it this far, thank you for staying with this story. Drop a comment about the most important lesson you've learned from family. And subscribe for more stories where character wins and greed faces consequences. Remember, the people who love you won't change when your situation changes. Everyone else is just playing a role until the credits roll.